we're all the way live there. So as the first time I saw you, Billy, as the one thing that I loved about you was we were shoulder to shoulder, which is always a tough way to stare over at somebody and really get to know them when you're a group of six. You know, you got to look
Yeah,
across the
right,
table, and these are the people I'm
right.
going to communicate with. But you were the no script guy. So since then, it triggered with me. Got to get this guy on to talk. We're no script here, always have been, and I absolutely love it. But first and foremost, Billy Boyer of the Minnesota Twins is with us today. And dude, it is, first of all, it's good to see you. But second of all, thanks for joining the boys here and jumping on a Mind Strong podcast.
No, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man. You're currently in Washington. Where are you at in Washington?
Yeah, so I'm in Oregon, Washington, which is about 65 miles south of Seattle.
Okay.
Kind of just a small, pretty rural little town
Yeah.
out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, man. Washington is. I went there 2 years ago. Saw a Seahawks game, which was absolutely phenomenal. But went in Leavenworth, I believe. We went and
Oh
hiked up
yeah,
there. Unbelievable area, Washington. Beautiful area. You know, one thing I got to, and I'm excited to ask you about a little bit, but there's good baseball out there, you know,
yeah,
and to sort of see how that works. Obviously, in my perspective, Driveline and that sort of stuff put Washington on the map of just starting to pay more attention to it. But you
sure,
know, for people to get an idea, I'll ask you some things about that for the baseball community. But for yourself and those who are listening, obviously anyone who gets a title like yours with the Twins, there's a lot of stuff that happens beforehand and a lot of
sure.
things and people and connections and wants and those sort of desires, which I'm excited to peel into. But can you sort of just kind of give an overlay of how your life's looked, what life's been like as a ball player, turned into as a coach, and then sort of create that timeline for us as we peel into it?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so I went to Enumclaw High School, which is not too far from where I actually live now. Another pretty rural town,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a farming community, and was lucky enough to get drafted out of high school by the Angels in 2003, and was able to put together a pretty decent little career. And unfortunately, my body just wasn't willing to kind of keep up with my mind and my drive to wanted to continue playing. So in
Yeah.
2008, I decided to retire. Kind of after three or four knee surgeries, you know, just couldn't keep up anymore.
Yeah.
So I ended up coming home, and at the time, to be quite honest, I was actually just having this conversation the other day with a buddy. Like, I didn't really want much to do with baseball, to be quite honest.
Sure.
I was kind of, you know, again, my mind was telling me that I don't want to be done playing, and my body was just saying, nope, you're done. You
Yeah.
know, and I wasn't able to keep up with you know, the demand that I felt I needed to do to compete at the highest level possible. And about I want to say about 6 months later, I got a phone call from Donald Fergus, who was at the time I had no idea who he was,
Mm-hmm.
and he called me and said, "Hey, I heard you're home. I'm coaching at Tacoma Community College, and I was wondering if you would come out and work with our infielders a couple days a week."
Sure.
And at first, I was just kind of like, "No, man, I'm good. Like, you know, I'm good. You know, I'm helping my dad run a company at the time, and kind of getting my feet wet in that, and kind of trying to decide what I want to do with my life post baseball."
Yeah.
And he just kind of kept calling,
Yeah.
and one of the deciding factors was actually my younger cousin was on the team. So I'm like, you know what?
Oh, sure.
I'm going to go out there. I'm just going to see what it's about. You know, I'm going to see, you know, if I can help and, you know, see what happens. Well, I ended up going out there and pretty much immediately fell in love with the coaching aspect, which I had never done before.
Sure.
And it kind of re-energized me, I think, back into baseball and gave me, you know, something that, you know, I was missing in my life for the last 6 or 8 months. And so I went out a couple days a week and just kind of helped with the infielders and just kind of hung out. And at the end of that season, I got a phone call from Tanner Swanson, who is now the catching coach for the New York Yankees. And he was coaching another local community college about, I don't know, 10 or 15 miles up the road. Same thing. Didn't know him from, you know, never met before. And he called me up and said, "Hey, I just got the Green River job. I was wondering if you'd be interested in coming over and helping us out." And I remember this pretty specifically. You know, we ended up the first time we ever met, we went to a restaurant with our wives and we sat down and like immediately hit it off.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I think I'm going to do this, but I have other responsibilities with the company that I'm helping run. And,
Sure.
I need to kind of figure out how I'm going to make this work. Practice is at, 1:00 every day.
Yeah.
And that's, right in the middle of the business.
Work time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So trying to figure out how I'm going to make that work. And lucky enough, my dad was kind of said, let's do it, man. Like, just do it and see what happens. Next thing you know, I'm a full-time coach with him, and he actually leaves and goes to the University of Washington. And then I go on to another junior community college about kind of right back to Tacoma. It's called Pierce Community College. And I spent 5 years there.
Wow.
We won 4 titles, like made a really good run.
Yeah.
And I think at that point I realized, okay, like I'm in this pretty deep, and like I think this is what I want to do, but I need more, you know.
Yeah.
And I think at the time I was 28 years old, and as being a high school draftee, not having a college experience or any education like that, so I had to go back to school. So I went back to school online. Wow. and to try to, if I want more, to coach at the Division I level or wherever, to be a head coach somewhere, I need to have my degree.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I went back to school with 2 kids and a wife, and just kind of try to figure it out, and I was lucky enough to get a call from Lindsey Maggs, the head coach of the University of Washington. And again, Tanner Swanson was there. Donegal Fergus, who I previously mentioned, they were both there. Right. And it kind of brought us all back together. But I was able to go there as a 28-year-old student manager.
Wow.
And just kind of to try to get my foot in the door. And I was there for 2 years as a student manager. And then I think in 2017, the end of 2017, I got a phone call from Donnie Harrell, who's the head coach at Seattle University. Mm-hmm. And he was at UW when my brother was there in the mid 2000s.
Okay.
So I've known him for a long time, family friend. And he had an opening on his staff and was able to come to me and offer me a volunteer assistant job at Seattle. And of course I jumped right on it. Like, this is it. This is my opportunity. To finally kind of, run an offense, coach third base, get in charge of an infield group, and kind of prove myself at that level. And the 1 year I was there, we had a pretty good year, 32 wins, and had a pretty good year. And then that winter is when the Twins called me, and it just, I think through word of mouth and maybe some Twitter content and some other stuff that I'd put out there, and got a phone call and was lucky enough to land the job. And here we are, 18 months later. And
well, how old are you now?
I'm 36 now.
Okay. So you I was trying to keep track of that. So you went and got the volunteer job. So 28 was the junior college, right? Where you were at and then you get the volunteer
college.
Yep. And then how old are you when you get the volunteer job?
So I go to UW, and I think I got to be 30 when I go to UW, 31 maybe.
Yep.
Almost done with my degree, and then probably 33 at Seattle U, and then 35 with the Twins, and now I'm 36 a year later.
That is awesome, man. No, it's really cool. So there's a lot to peel into that, and I think I want to I'm going to not forget about that thought process of being in that age level, because I obviously know the coaching realm and the decisions that you have to make at that time of your life, which compared to people who aren't in sports, I know what it's like to have a 30-year-old who's now been working for 6 years or so and has a corporate job or some situation where they're doing sort of that realm, and to make those choices is sort of the mark of understanding how much you like doing what you're doing, which is really cool, and I can't wait to dive into that. But what I'm really curious about too is you're saying when you got out of baseball, you got these phone calls and without meeting these people, so obviously that says a lot about you and just the sense of what people heard, word of mouth, or reputation, and those sort of things. What do you think that was? Like, why was it, was that from your playing career? Was that from where you were at home? How did these people know to go towards you? Were you a baseball coach mind when you were playing? Like, what was the thought pattern where these people saw something in you where they went and jumped and made a phone call?
That's a really good question, man. I don't know if I know the answer to that, but I think what you said was that stuck out to me is, were you a coach's mind when you were playing? And I think the answer to that was definitely yes.
Yeah.
To be as humble as possible, I felt like I was a pretty skilled player,
Sure.
but I relied on being better in that front, right? Knowing more about the game, being in the right position all the time, and being able to dissect information, and I was hungry for information. I really wanted to know as much as possible about what we were trying to do, or as much as possible about the game, technique wise, mental wise, whatever anybody had to offer, I wanted to know.
Yeah.
So I think I had that kind of mindset kind of from the beginning. Definitely a coach's mind when I was a player. And to be honest, I don't really know why they called me. I think Donegal might have called me because of my cousin, maybe, being on the team.
Yeah.
Funny enough, this is actually, Tanner Swanson was at Central Washington as a coach there. And my older cousin, the older brother, would have been, I don't know, man. I'm not sure. Well, I'm not exactly sure how they made those decisions to call me.
Well, it's something that I'm really fascinated by, because I do firmly believe that people can feel people's energy, like how you said with Tanner, where you clicked right away. There's a lot that goes into that. We innately observe each other's body language, or observe how people act, or their tone, or how they carry themselves. So then you gravitate towards that, which it's cool to ask you questions, because what makes me really curious about learning from you is the concept of, okay, well, if they were able to feel that from you, peel back a little bit before that, and you made a decision at an age of baseball to sort of walk away from something. And I'm very also curious of, that's in itself is an amazing choice, right? And I can't imagine that. I've made that decision too. So it's very it's heartbreaking first and foremost. And then depending on injuries and those sort of things that are outside of your control, who was in your corner at that time, either guiding you, or do you remember those conversations of when did you get to how did you see through that to make a clear-cut decision that was optimal for just your life in general, and kind of saying goodbye to something that you knew so deeply?
Yeah, I think my dad was, being a high school draftee, I still called my dad almost every day,
right?
The next morning, and say, hey, what happened last night. I know you're watching or listening, but he always, first and foremost, my dad was a player, right? So I think he understood my passion, and for the game. And I think I really relied on him to as a young man trying to figure this out, to help me, not necessarily make the decisions, but to help talk my way through decisions sometimes. And I think I just came to the realization at one point that my body's just not going to keep up with what I wanted to do. And, I played pretty hard, and I took a lot of pride in playing hard, and I wanted to be the guy that, was going full throttle all the time. And I don't regret that at all, but it definitely took a wear on my body. And it came a day where, I can't perform to the level that I want to perform, or that I think I'm capable of performing at if I'm healthy, and I'm not healthy. So, it just kind of came to a time to where, I think at some point we all got to make pretty tough decisions, and I could stick it out in the minor leagues and have a 6, 8, 10, 12 year career in the minor leagues and be okay with that. But I think I came to the realization that, look, I want more in life. I want to get married. I want to have kids. And if I continue this life, that, maybe that's not the best route for me. And then I should probably start looking beyond my playing career and trying to find out what's next in life for me. And like I said, we had a company that I could go home to and try to jump into at a low level and try to learn the company inside it out, and hopefully someday, maybe run it. And that was kind of the plan, but it just didn't last very long. I think the bug came back, that my real passion is in baseball. I've been in a dugout. Like I said, my dad was a player, and I've been in a dugout since I was in diapers. And that's just where, it's, I don't want to say it's my calling, but I think it is kind of my calling. You know what I mean? I mean, depending on how you view things, like I'm gravitated towards, the people. I'm gravitating towards the game, the complications, the challenges that come with it, and just the brain that you have to do this, so yeah, I mean, it was a tough decision, but I think it was the right decision at the time. And but it was a really hard one. Like, I mean, it tore me up pretty good.
Yeah.
It tore me up pretty good.
Well, no, you touched on something. So one of the reasons, so for people who can understand this to a degree, is the first time I met you, I got to listen to you speak, right? So I saw you coach to a large audience, and I just think when you're in those moments, you're falling to the level of how that person learns, right? So I'm actually just listening to you as a speaker of where your brain capacity is of learning. And that's how I've always sort of viewed teaching or watching speakers, is how can I pick up how this person learns? And that was when we connected, because I wanted to know, how did you think of that with an animal, tie that into baseball, think of that of now, how do I communicate that so players understand it, which is sort of the puzzling piece of it. And then for anybody who's really good at their performance in any field, they're just always a learner. They're always curious, which you just touched on that, right? And so when you talk about your calling and you go back to baseball after the hard spell of leaving it, something that we're going to go deeper into that learning part, but I got to ask, because you're married, you want to have kids, you have an option to take a business, and then you go into junior college baseball and you take classes. So the hard part about that is that you're making a decision that, yes, fortunately got you to where you are now, and then obviously keep pushing the envelope and keep improving and those sort of things. But at the same time, you had to get a beginner mindset right away. And when you got so close to Major League Baseball, which is like the peak of that kid in the diapers, now you have to have that I call it on the couch mentality, right? Like, you got to go back and sleep on the couch again and start over and still have some sort of carrot out in front that you want to get to, and as a coach, or like me, I didn't want to do that. So that walked me out of wanting to coach right away. Now I wanted to do that in something else, right? Now, and people want to do that in other things, and on and on and on. But can you recall what it was that sort of sustained this newfound struggle that wasn't a player? What was the new struggle you were willing to embrace in this coaching realm and learn all these things and control a family? Like, what was I'm going to do this to my best ability? Can you sort of define that or remember that?
Man, I don't know. I think I'm just driven by challenges.
Yeah.
Like, I think, I don't know if I can recall an exact example, but I think I'm just, I just really want to be the best at what I do.
Yeah.
And I'm driven by, trying to fulfill that. And in whatever way it is, if it's as a coach, or if it's, I think, I would have been pretty content with just being a junior college coach forever. I really enjoyed that level. And, but now there's just something in me that, has changed over time. And like, I'm so driven by just trying to do this at the highest level possible with the best players on the planet, and trying to, help them, any way I can. And, I think I'm just really driven by, like I said, like, just by challenges and the unknown, and just kind of where can I take this thing, and how good can I be, and can I provide for my family while I get to do what I love every single day.
Sure.
And that's been, something that's been pretty cool, and that I've been, because for a long time, for the entire junior college stint, and all the way up until, Seattle U, in my first volunteer job, I never got a paycheck.
Yeah.
You're running camps, you're doing the things that, you can make some money doing it, but it's, you're not making a daily living, but you just figure it out. And like you kind of hustle, and you just you run some camps, and you travel around the country, jump into camp to camp to try to make $500 here and there. And you just, but for whatever reason, it was still okay. Right.
Yeah.
Like it's okay. Like, I'll figure it out, like, and we'll be fine. And it's kind of funny. The year after I was the volunteer at Seattle U, the very next season, going through the fall, I actually got my first paid job as a paid assistant. And I was on the job for like 2 months, and then I took the Twins jobs, so I worked a decade to get a paid assistant job at the D1 level. And then I had one for 2 months and, ended up walking away a little bit to chase this professional side.
Yeah.
And, which I've absolutely loved. I mean, it's been maybe one of the best decisions of my life.
Cool.
And from a coaching side, and it's just been incredible. The people that we get to work with every day, the players, the org in general with the Twins is just, man, it's nuts, man, how driven these guys are to get smarter and learn and personal development. And it's from the top down. It's really cool.
So in that specific conversation, what is also fascinating to me is you guys are at the top level of performance in your specific craft. You guys are at the best. You're at the best in the world, and in your learners. You see that across the board of people who push the paradigm and enhance the performance are learners at a level where you would think you don't really need to learn. Now, that that's not something that can sustain you, but how is it that you continuously learn? It's a question I like asking people a lot. I ask myself this a lot, but how do you learn how to learn? And you are at the highest level of expertise in the perception of the world, and yet you keep coming back to this ability to learning and thinking and advancing. And what is it? Can you even pinpoint that of what makes you find things to learn about something that you've known for so long?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to put it out there. I don't read at all.
Yeah,
like
awesome.
I'm not a reader at all. Like I'm a listener, right? And I'm an observer. So I spend a lot of time. I'll just go walk into the pitching coordinator's office and sit down and say, what do you guys got? What are you listening to? Or what are you talking about? And I'll just sit there and listen to them talk and try to pick up, a thing or here and there. And we have a room that all the coaches kind of sit in post day, and the hitting group's in there, and then the pitching group's in there, and they're all kind of got these side conversations going on. I'm just sitting in the corner, just kicked back, and just going, what can I pick up today, right? How can I learn something today? And and those guys are smart, man, and they're constantly learning. And it's just I spend a lot of time on the phone having conversations. I spend a lot of time listening, and but I'm not a reader, I don't read much. I've always, this might sound kind of weird, but I've always kind of found this a little bit interesting. Like, the guy that wrote the book wasn't necessarily reading a bunch of other books, right? Like he was probably out there in the field with boots on the ground, learning through experiences. And you know what I mean? So to me, like that, I like that mentality.
Hold on, Bill. Froze on me. Can you hear me? Son of a bitch.
Is it me or you?
Oh, I got you. Okay. This is all right. Can you hear me again?
Yep, I got you.
The good news about this is I can just edit that. Can we tie back into that?
Yeah.
Damn, you had me freaking rolling too. All right, we're good. Keep it going. Let's just try to drive back into that. I'll be able to fix that for us. But the guy who wrote the book had boots on the ground.
I just think like the guy that writes the book is typically not reading, and maybe I'm wrong, but maybe he's not reading a bunch of other books. Like the guys that, you go back in time and watch the guy that, invented all these inventions. Like they weren't reading books about that. They were experimenting. They were out there, boots on the ground, experimenting, trying new things. Like that's how I like to learn. That's how I like to, you get an idea because you saw something on social media, or you saw something, or you heard something from a buddy, and you just try it. Like, I think that's where real learning is running experiments for me anyways. This is how I operate, is running experiments and trying to find out if this is sustainable to teaching our players, or if it just doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, then okay, move on. But if it kind of works, okay, let's find a better option, and that's just kind of how I operate. Like I just, I'm a very visual guy. I like to listen. I like to observe, and I just don't spend a bunch of time with my nose in a book. I want to learn those things. It doesn't work for me, like text just doesn't work for me a lot of the times. And I like to try to find other ways.
Yeah, so I love that and the concept of it because it's so unique, right? And everyone has their unique ability, but I think the empowerment there is figuring out what that ability is. You know, how do you learn, right? And then once you figure that out, you know, you're in a perspective of, well, I don't read, which is great, but now at the same time, a lot of people could be agreeing with you or head nodding, but then going, okay, well, how do you do that? You know, because now your ideas that come to the table, you know, you've got to probably be really powerful in a room of like, and I'll even go on the side of that's what happened with me because here I am listening to you and you're making me buy into an idea. Right. And so that's a high level of confidence from the speaker or the beholder already. So when you get creative and, you know, call it your creative intelligence, that's like discovery, right? You're taking all of this stuff and experience, tying it into your brain waves, and then you're discovering new things. How have you found maybe some backlash and kept your ideas pushing forward? Where if people maybe not seeing it from your point of view yet, how have you kept moving that confident needle so that you don't lose track of that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges, right?
Yeah.
Is teaching, but you know, like in that sense where you see things from such a different perspective sometimes, you know, like to go back to the tiger jumping, you know, in my presentation, you know, and how that completely changed the way that I viewed a specific technique that we were trying to adapt with our players. And it's a real challenge sometimes because look, I'll just be like straight transparent. Like I'm super dyslexic. So like talking and reading and, you know, like I say things sometimes that don't make sense. Yeah. They just don't work for me. And for a really long time, I saw that as like a disability, like all the way. I mean, to be quite honest, I signed out of high school and I didn't go to college because of that exact thing.
Yeah.
And awesome. It scared me to go to college baseball and to fail in the classroom.
Wow.
Because I had challenges in the way that my brain processed information. And then as I got into coaching, like, and this has really happened probably over the last 3 or 4 years where I've really started to see this more as a strength. I've been around some people that have made me realize that, you know, you included, you know, in these types of conversations, you know, like it's not a deficiency in the way that I do my work. You know, It's actually a strength, and I see things differently, and I see things more creatively, and the way that I work and the way that I share information probably comes out that way. So, you know, and I think it's a major strength now, and a lot of guys, you know. From a teaching standpoint, you know, I think there's a lot of, you know, with all these presentations and things that are happening now, like there's a real push to say bigger words and to seem like the smartest guy in the room. Right. And I just don't like that. That's why when we first met and talked, like, I'm just totally off the script, man. I'm just going to throw some stuff on a board and we're going to roll.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. I think that's real teaching to me.
For sure.
You know, it's not regurgitation, right? It's genuine thought that is coming from me.
Yeah.
And the way that I perceive things and the way that I try to relay those to players. And you know, so I mean it's a challenge sometimes, and you want to be able to connect with guys, you know, reading a book or through this different language that's being spoken now, you know. Sometimes I guess a kind of way to put it, and but it just doesn't work for me. So I spend a lot of time, you know, just talking to people and trying to be, and I joke about it too. Like, you know, like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. Use normal words, man. It's too big of a word for me. Like, tone it down a little bit. But I think players connect with me. At least I feel that way, you know, like, because I teach very visually too. You know, we draw stuff in the dirt. We, you know, we do things just maybe a little bit unorthodox or a little bit outside the box, but it works for us.
Yeah. Well, you're in the tiger analogy. I mean, I took that to the bank and was doing that. And it is insane how efficient it worked, and it stops any type of thinking. So you just react. And as a better athlete, you know, better foot speed, better power, all this sort of stuff, it just gets better, right? Like an animal. But so I loved it, and I love where you're headed on this, and I love the track that you're going down. Now, at the same time, I can see where you could get backlash because everyone wants that validated. You know, you can't say anything without a massive amount of research at this point, you know, and research is fine. It's just, it's a way of peeling into something deeper. You know, the mark of curiosity and discovery is figuring out something that hasn't been done before, right? So
That's
now
correct.
when you take this and you teach that to a player, how have you found over the years to get your sort of voice or your visual? How have you found a way to adapt that feedback and make that even better to get people to accelerate their learning to what you're trying to teach them?
Right. Yeah. I think the biggest thing that, I've learned over the course of time in the coaching world is it's not necessarily the content that you're teaching. It's the relationship you have with the player. Right. So if the information is right, wrong, or indifferent, it doesn't really matter. Right. Like if you have the relationship and the trust built up with that player, you could tell them whatever you want and they're going to feel like it's right. And they're going to feel like it's correct. And that's the real art of coaching for me. Like, and that's the real challenge of coaching is one, trusting your information, right? Like really believing in what you're teaching. And if you do that and you have a leg to stand on because you've taken time to build a relationship with your player, then like I think it typically comes across as, this guy knows what he's talking about, and I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna tune in here and try to understand. And we really press our guys to ask questions too.
I love it.
I'm really quick to say, like, look, guys, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if this is right. Like, I think this is right, and here's why I think this is right.
Yeah.
Not because of I read a book and it said it was right. It's because I've done the research myself. And it might be kind of unconventional research, right? Sure. It might be like watching tigers jump or watching animals move, and what is natural biology kind of telling us about the way that these animals react in their environments, and how can we mimic that?
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure if big cats are doing this when they hunt, that we should probably try to mimic it. Yeah, exactly. Right. We should probably pay attention to this. So, and it's different too, right? Like when you pull this up in a presentation in front of, 45 or 50 players and you're talking about this and they look at you like you're crazy, but you say, hey, stick with me.
Yeah.
Stick with me. We're going to tie this back together. But also, like, again, just to kind of go back, like, it's okay to say, I don't really know.
Sure.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
I think I know. And I'm like, my gut is telling you that this is right. But I need your guys' feedback. I need you. We're going to go out in the dirt and we're going to try this out for a day or two. And we're going to kind of roll the dice and see where we go and how this works. And if your feedback is the feedback that we expect or that we're looking for, we'll continue to move forward. And if it's not, we'll make an adjustment. Yeah. And that kind of puts the ball in their court a little bit, right? Like, look, we're here for you guys, right? We're here to provide you guys with techniques or skill sets that can allow you to advance your game. And if we're wrong, that falls in our plates, and we'll adjust.
Right.
Yeah, we'll adjust. But we need your feedback. And I think by showing a level of vulnerability to the players and saying, I don't know, sometimes is like, they're like, okay, I like this guy. Like, as opposed to always saying, like, you're going to do what I tell you to do, coaching style, which is very much how it was when I was a player. And, and I think we were kind of raised that way too. Like the way that we, listen to your coach and do what he tells you to do,
authority,
like, right?
Yeah.
Authority. Yeah. It's demanding respect. It's demanding that you trust me. Right.
Yeah.
And as opposed to earning the respect and earning the trust through the foundations of building a relationship with that player. And it's much deeper than just X's and O's. Right.
It is. And, I'm interested in the sense of, I wrote about this we have a blog series, and I wrote this blog about how your first initial belief or idea, if you don't spend the time articulating it on your own, you won't be able to receive feedback, because initial feedback for the most part is humiliating, because your first idea is not articulated by the person in front of you, which is like the art of coaching, right? Or the art of progressing together, is trying to communicate at the same level where you guys can both improve. Now, I've looked at that in the entrepreneurial world, right? Where it's like you go out and you pitch an idea, or you go to a business or a company. And I learned early on, if I don't spend time with this thought and I don't articulate what this idea is, then I can't handle questions, because I will get defensive, right? And so now you have a really interesting part of that, because one, you've been able to see that evolve over the course of a decade through junior college, 2-year school, 4-year school, and now pro ball. And that seems really crazy to me to think of the levels of athletes that you're talking to. But then first part of that question would be what you just talked about is a player, maybe it's just our perception. We looked at the coach of they're always right. And if they tell us to screw off, then we just go, okay, I hate that guy, and screw him. He ruined my career. Whereas, I don't know, do you get as much backlash or do you have to promote question asking? Like, does an 18-year-old really criticize the feedback or ask the questions without you promoting it? Or what have you seen through the age group of players? And what would you sort of suggest to get many players to question things?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. And I would say definitely at the lower levels that you have to promote more question asking for sure. Like I think that the players were, they're trying to figure it out, and they're trying to figure out if this guy, as in the coach, kind of knows what he's talking about. But it's also in the junior college level, you ride so much on those coaches to get you to the next level too, right? To help you get your next job. Right. So you don't want to upset anybody, and you don't want to, again, we would try to promote, we didn't call them lectures. We called them discussions, right? Okay. Like these are discussions when we're in the classroom, like we need your participation, so we can figure out that we can talk our way through this a little bit.
Yeah.
One thing that I've really found as I've, at the Division I level, I was lucky enough to have some players at UW that were asked a lot of questions.
That's awesome.
And would challenge your thought a little bit. They've come through, some pretty good high schools, some pretty good coaching along the way, and would ask some questions, not all of them, but there was a couple that really stand out in my mind right now that, would really challenge me. In fact, I still have a great relationship with this player, and we talk all the time because he's, we spend a lot of time in the off season training together and have created this relationship to where, it's okay to challenge each other in the way that we think and the way that we try to accomplish tasks and skill sets. Right. But one thing I've really kind of fallen in love with at the pro level is I think most people would be surprised how hungry these guys are to learn new things. That's right. Cool. And it's really cool. Like, I think that was one of the worries, like making the jump from the college side over was I remember being a player and being around guys that just were in it for themselves and just kind of trying to figure out, what can I do to get to the next step? But I really feel like times have changed in the last 10 or 15 years from a coach or from a player standpoint. Like, these guys are real. I think their ability to get so much information wherever they want via Twitter, social media in general, right? These guys have so much information at their fingertips that they kind of gravitate to what they want, and they have a pretty good sense of what that information is and how they can use it as a weapon or how they can apply it to their skill sets. So when you come to them with suggestions, like they're not scared to, well, what about this? Or, and I think coaching is kind of, in a lot of ways, it's gone that way, right? Of what do you want to do? How can I help you? Right. Not here's what you need to do. Right. So, and there's still a level of both, right? But for sure. But, just for instance, this last spring training, we brought in, I don't know, 5 free agents, right? At the AA, AAA level, guys that had not been in our org before, and they come in and we do things different. Like at least I think we do.
Yeah.
And in the way that our training environments are designed, the way that the things that we train are just different than just taking ground balls every day. And we got pretty incredible feedback from those guys. That's awesome. 28-year-old that's been in the big leagues.
Yeah,
he's been in the big leagues. He's been through the entire thing. He knows what he needs, and now he's back in AAA and he's fighting like hell to get back. And to get a compliment from a guy like that to say, like, you guys are doing some cool stuff and I'm 100% on board,
right.
And to ask questions and to challenge you in the way that you think and the way that you teach is, like, they're teaching us, man.
Yeah.
Like, they're helping us get better in the way that we perceive our environments.
Well, so you said a lot of awesome golden nuggets in there, and is it harder now to coach because of the accessibility to information, because you can see that guy who has experience, right? He has experience with knowledge. So that's like a practical wisdom or understanding now. So you can kind of get to a good playing field there of communication. Whereas, do you see an issue on the flip side of that where you get, I guess age doesn't necessarily matter, but do you see a guy who's just overloaded with information, with communication, and now it's just, where do we even start, or where do we go?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And that is definitely one of the challenges,
Yeah,
right? But
I can imagine.
but trying to just understand where they're coming from.
Right.
Right. And again, to go back to the real true art of coaching is finding a way through building a relationship to meet him halfway, right?
Sure.
Like to say, hey, okay, I get where you're coming from. Yep. Yep. But understand where I'm coming from. And we talk a lot about this, like with our infielders, like we use a lot of training gloves and stuff. And I tell them on the first day, look, if you don't want to use it, don't use it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that, but I want to know why.
I love that.
Right. I want to know why.
Yeah.
And if you don't, and if you come to me and you give me a good reason why, expect some kind of rebuttal of here's why I think you should do it.
Yeah.
And if we can meet in the middle and you start with it, but then you take it off or you use it for a certain amount of reps, great. Right. But it, I just want to know why you don't want to,
do your
if
homework.
You don't trust me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. If you don't trust me, you don't trust me. I'm fine with that. Like if you have other beliefs of, let's talk about them, express them to me, and let's have a discussion. Let's have a conversation of how we can figure out the best route for us to be able to have a quality working relationship and do this together and not be, well, I don't do that. Yeah. Right. And I've ran into that a little bit,
I'm sure.
And you just gotta roll with the punches and again, try to create discussions, dialogue, and conversations that lead to common ground.
Well, it is also aggressively plays into your strength because you're basically bringing them to your level of, well, if you have a reason, well, then tell me why. And now you're also learning with them.
Exactly.
It's an accelerated learning process.
Exactly.
You've talked a lot about relationships, which obviously I think anyone in sports, I mean, I was born in the baseball family, so it's always easy for me to have these conversations too, because I've got the baseball family of the parents, the uncle, I mean, the dad, they all played professionally, collegiately. I played professionally, collegiately, and obviously we're connected. The baseball world is small. We could sit here and have a podcast about just people we know that we both know, and right. Now, the relationships has been the pillar of that since I was a little boy and has not changed. And I think as you evolve with it, you find the strength in that, especially when you come out of it as a player and you realize how important that really is when you're playing. And then as a coach, you realize that, really as a good person, that'll accelerate your career professionally anyways. So just being a good teammate, being a good person, all that stuff is amazing. And I tremendously obviously believe in that. But you've also mentioned how you have to connect with the player. In professional baseball, especially as a coordinator, you oversee such mass amount of people and you oversee coaches, right? You have scouts, personal development, player development, all that sort of stuff. How have you, I guess it's a two-part, but one, how have you maintained your own ability to trust in yourself as an evolving coach? And then two, how have you learned in the last year and a half of how to maximize relationships in a very black and white world? Because you guys do that at an extremely high level. So it's really interesting to me to sort of get your input on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was probably the thing I struggled with the most.
Okay.
Coming in as a coordinator, and being one of the younger guys on the staff in general, like as a coordinator and being in that role was, you want to come in and you want to lay foundations and you want to kind of bring the things that you really believe in to the system and create it and hit the ground running, so to speak. Right. Yeah. But I think where I failed, in that sense was you forget a little bit about the foundation that's already been laid, over the last 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe even 10 years of the guys that were there before you. And, I think I failed in that realm for sure. And it took me a couple of months to realize that, I feel like, I'm a pretty good dude and I can usually go into a room and make friends pretty quick. And not that I'm the most social guy, but it's usually not that tough for me, but I think in that realm it was for sure. And the way that, I had to kind of take a step back and say, okay, time out. Like, this isn't about necessarily us getting everything implemented right now. Sure. Right. That I need to step back and start focusing, less on the things that I feel like we need to do and more on the things that we need to how we can connect, right? And how we can all get on the same page and how we can move forward together as a group. And it was the first time that I've ever been in that type of scenario. And I think it was like in the college side, like it's 3 or 4 guys
sitting in
trying
office.
to manage. Yeah. Right. Just trying to, okay, what am I going to do with my guys today?
Yeah.
And now it's, what are we going to do with our guys? How are we going to manage 50 players? How are we going to manage who we put where and the training environments, and how we can let their strengths come out and go dominate the teach points or whatever it is. And that was a huge learning experience for me personally.
I bet.
Of almost how do you say this? I mean, I guess maybe setting my ego aside a little bit and saying, okay, you don't matter.
Right.
Like what you want doesn't matter. Right.
Yeah,
and let's focus on the coaches. Let's get their ideas. Let's get them engaged in what we're doing. Let's have some tough conversations of things that we really believe
For
in.
Sure.
And again, try to come to common ground on that. And, I spent most of last year and this entire offseason really trying to hone that in, and really trying to figure out how to connect with all these different individuals on a much, much deeper level, and outside of baseball. Like it just doesn't that doesn't matter. That's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
We know that that's going to happen organically. Like we're going to be able to create teach points and teach techniques and all those things like that I'm not worried about. It's how can we come out of this thing in spring 2020 and be a united group, speaking the same language, and like really being on the same page and tugging on the rope the same direction. And I had to take some, to go back to your criticism talk. Like I had to take some criticism, like from some bosses and some senior advisors that, I had to take, some tough feedback, and to be able to it's like you said, the first response is like, you want to defend yourself.
Right.
And I was, and I'm a pretty fiery dude, right?
Yeah.
I want to defend myself.
Yeah.
I want to defend myself.
Yeah.
But I kind of just came to the conclusion that, sit back, listen.
Yeah.
Right. Like, this isn't about you. This is about all of us together. How can we find ways to get on the same page and create these relationships to where, we can provide a quality environment for everybody involved. And if we do that, it's just going to be so much better. Like we're going to teach better. We're going to play better because everybody's going to be happier.
Yeah. You're going to have fun.
And we're all going to be on the same team. Right. Like, and I think we've been able, I don't know if we've been able to do it all the way, but we've definitely made strides in the right direction. I'm really proud of our guys and even myself, to say, I was able to look at myself in the mirror and take a few steps back and to say, okay, slow down.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to prove yourself right now. Like we're going to prove this together. Like we're going to do this together. And that's been a really valuable learning experience for me. And I think I've learned more about myself in the last 12 or 18 months than I have my entire career.
Wow.
Of how just to connect with people and to listen and be able to take feedback and, which is hard.
I would say
it's easy. It's not easy, man. It's hard to take feedback sometimes. And it's hard to give feedback sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, when you feel like you got to tell a guy, a certain thing and you got to kind of break down his walls and say, I don't know if we should do it that way or if we should, that's tough and it's challenging but it's also, like I said, to go back, you really learn when your boots are on the ground and you're in that environment.
You do.
Right.
You do. I've never, something that you said that I've never been able to ask this to, I don't think I've ever been able to ask this to a coach specifically, but what you're saying to me that is just tying in my brain of just it's so cool to hear from your perspective of, if you're a coach or a teacher, you can get so caught up of thinking like you're the coach, right? Like you're the leader, you're the person who has no issue, right? And it's almost as a player, when you're a rookie, for the most part, if you make it to the big leagues, you just kind of accept that you're the rookie. People put their arm around you. You look up to these good leaders, and you're okay with being wrong because you're a rookie. Whereas a coach, you also have to do that, but you're a coach. So it's got to be a wild concept, and what is the dichotomy that you can can you differentiate that between a player and a coach, where now on the other side of being a coach, you have that exact experience where you have to get feedback from ideas. Did you come into pro ball really excited, and you've been in roles where you're leading and teaching so many people, and people younger, so they're looking at you like, oh, this guy's right about everything. And then
Yeah.
is that what you think was the sort of the changing of where you've grown, accelerating that so quickly?
Yeah, I think for sure. Yeah, I think like you said, you come in and you want to prove yourself.
Yeah.
Like I belong here. Like
Yeah.
I'm good at what I do. I believe in what
Yeah.
I teach,
Yeah.
and I can help us. I believe I can help
Help
us
us. Yeah.
become better defenders, right? Or whatever it is. And but I learned pretty quickly that there's a lot of guys that have incredible experience that you can learn from too. Like and
Yeah.
like I think I don't know if I was expecting that,
Sure.
or if I had put that in my mind enough to say like this is going to be a great learning experience for me too. I
Right.
think when you hear like, oh, I'm the new coordinator, like like, okay, I have to bring the heat, right? I got to come prepared to help everybody get better, and that's just not true. Like it's just not like you help facilitate things, but I'm learning as much or more than anybody,
Yeah.
because I'm lucky enough to have these conversations with this massive group of players, this massive
Yeah.
group of coaches,
For sure.
so I feel like I've done probably a lot more learning than anybody else.
Right.
And like try to be excited about that and try to listen with open ears and a clear mind of how can I continue to grow, not only as a coach, but as a person.
Yeah.
And that's, been really cool. But I think you're right. Like if you come in and you're a rookie at the big league level, you just kind of keep your mouth shut
Yeah.
and you kind of roll with the punches and you try to just take it all in. But if you come in as a coach, you're expected to have a voice. And I think for me, like, I think one of my strengths is the vulnerability of like saying, hey,
That's
look,
awesome.
I don't know, man. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm right. Like I feel pretty convicted in this, but I'm willing to have the discussion. But you better bring the heat. Like you better sell me.
Yeah.
You better come at me and really convince me on why what we're teaching or what we're doing is not appropriate or why or it's wrong or
Yeah.
it should be done different.
Sure.
Be prepared for a fight, a dog fight, so to speak, of let's figure this out. Like let's have real tough conversations sometimes of technique or whatever it is, and let's come to a ground that we can all decide that is going to lead to improvement of our players.
Yeah, man. And so there's, when you come at stuff at your level too, and you do have people that are going to challenge you because everyone is chasing edges, right? You're at a field where every person is chasing an edge and everyone is trying to grab that little piece that they can get to accelerate themselves. Now, have you had moments, or what would be your suggestion as a coach of where you go into something and you believe in it so much and maybe it's not working? Maybe you have some defensive skill work or some base running skill work, or when you were in college overseeing even more, you come into this with the philosophy and it's not working, but how do you continue to see that through? There's had to have been moments in your career where there's something not working and maybe people are coming off the boat, they're starting to fall out of belief. How have you seen that through or continued to keep people on the boat with you?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think a good example of that is some of the pre-pitch technique stuff that I actually presented on. Some of the stuff that we were teaching, I think, was removing some athleticism out of the player.
Yeah.
We felt like we were trying to increase that feel, but the way that we were teaching it, 18 months ago was, it just seemed awkward at times.
Yeah.
For not for all players, but for some players. And we're like, and somebody brought it to my attention and I was like, yeah, like I totally agree. I've been seeing it myself. So what's the next move? How do we, I think what we're doing is right. I think it's, it helps us, our brains process information and gives us an opportunity to increase our range or our ability to create a stronger first step. But it seems awkward sometimes. And how do we find a way to get around this? And through a lot of conversations and kind of going back to the drawing board, we've come up with a new style. And it seems, and rolling it out here in 2020, we've had great feedback from the players that have been that went through it in 19 and in 20,
Nice.
but it took time for us to kind of, and we know that in 19, we know what we were doing was working in the numbers, right? We were showing increases of range in some statistics, but we still felt like it was, removing maybe some feel and some athleticism. And so we had to go back to the drawing board. And again, through just a bunch of conversations and kind of going back and researching, different things, trying to figure out how we can make this idea more comfortable for our players, or more routine oriented, where it's easy to do. Right. And our player, we got great feedback from them, and some of the comments we got was, I feel more athletic. I feel loose. I feel quick. And I'm like, okay, well, mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Then we made the right adjustments. Right. And we don't know yet. If, from a number standpoint, if it's going to sustain or decline or increase from our numbers in 19. But what we do know is that our players are feeling more athletic. And I would venture to say, if they're feeling more athletic and they're feeling, like they're able to repeat this move over and over and over again with quality timing, that we're going to see at least sustain the numbers that we found in 19. So, but yeah, like I think there's definitely challenges when you say, and again, to go back to that vulnerability piece, like, I don't know, man. Like, I think I know. I don't really know. So I need your feedback, you know, and we need to be able to talk our way through this.
Well, it's just something where it just seems very difficult, right? Because being wrong can be a very tough subject, especially when you are a voice, because and I guess to kind of, as we kind of tie it in, and I'd take you through something at the end where we really peel into you in general, which we do with all our guests. But when you're coaching and you're wrong, it's a lot more difficult, because now the next day you're at that drawing board with the 40 faces staring at you again, right? And I think that could, because I've had to experience that, I've had to do a lot of that in my time of coaching and leading and speaking, where you're wrong, and I used to get really nervous. It's really cool to hear you say that, because something that used to really bark at me was reading a book and then saying it in front of people who were smart, and the whole time you couldn't speak confidently because you were afraid of saying something wrong. And you have to break that frame, at least in my perspective. You have to get out of that, and you have to get vulnerable and just work on being less wrong, right? And just keep evolving that with the people around you. But if you were talking to younger coaches, or even yourself, really, and anyone in general, what is the area of being wrong and then getting up the next day and speaking in front of that whiteboard, in front of the 40 faces? How do you attack that day to keep yourself moving as yourself singularly?
Yeah, I mean, I say I haven't been wrong a lot, I don't think.
No, but it's just
but I think but I also am in a position now where we have data, and data's gonna, and science will surprise, right? Like when you run an experiment, and we've done this, and I'm waiting on some results right now of some different things, but science will surprise you sometimes. You think your eyes see something, and then you run an experiment, and you get some data back, and it says, nope, that's not right. And you got to be able to swallow that pill and go, look, we try. I think the way that I would approach it, and I haven't necessarily had to do this, but I think the way I would approach it is going to that whiteboard the next day and saying, look, hey man, we tried, we learned, we're getting better. Right. We're going to have to revamp. We're going to have to move on from this. And we're going to ask you guys to kind of take a step back, maybe, but I think being able to do that again just shows a level of we're trying to figure this out for you guys. Yeah. Right. We're not always going to be right, but we are in the trenches with you guys trying to figure this out. We're trying to figure out the best skill sets, the best techniques, the best, whatever it might be, to help you improve your ability to get to the big leagues. Yeah. Like, I think that's our job, right? Our job is to create players that can someday impact our big league club. Yeah. And we can't do that with every guy, but we're sure as hell going to try. Right. We're going to try to give every guy an opportunity, and maybe it's not to get to the big leagues. Maybe it's the opportunity just to get to the next level. Sure. Right? To see what happens, give you another year. Yeah. Right. And maybe you blossom and you turn in, and that's not an uncommon story in our game. It happens. It doesn't happen that much, but it does happen. Right. Yeah. To where, guys just kind of hangs on, and then the next thing you know, he just blossoms as a 27-year-old or a 28-year-old, and has a 6 or 7 or 8 year career in the big leagues. It's not the standard, 22-year-old or 24-year-old that breaks in early and has a 15-year career.
Right.
But we're just trying to provide our guys with those types of opportunities, like, get to the next level. And I think you have to be willing to say, I don't know. I think you have to be willing to say, we tried, we learned, right? Like, and we're I think what I found, at least, and maybe I'm biased because I'm speaking about myself and our staff, but I think what we found is, our players have connected with us because we've had some vulnerable moments to say,
That's
like,
awesome.
I don't really know, man.
Yeah.
I think I know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. This has never really been done before. Like, and we're searching for ways to separate ourselves from everybody else. And we generally believe that this will lead to advancement in skill set for you. And so we're going to give it a roll. Are you in or are you out?
Yeah.
And most of the time they're in, and like, let's roll, let's go. And we'll figure it out along the way, but we need your guys' feedback. We need you to be honest with us. We need you to ask questions. We need you, we're learning with you as we go through this process. So, it's been pretty cool to be able to
that's
that kind of an environment.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. It's almost like I'm gathering of you set this foundation early as just a learning foundation, and then that whiteboard wouldn't be a negative. It would almost be the positive no matter what happened.
Exactly.
So that's kind of what I'm gathering from you. And so when we kind of tie a bow on it, Billy, and I usually sort of run everyone down. When we started Mind Strong years ago, I haven't had that many baseball, guys on the podcast for the whole duration of it. But we call our diamond series because of a baseball diamond. So when we first got out of baseball, we were speaking, people would ask us to have a plan. So we just we went back to our roots. Yeah, we call it the diamond series. And it was always purpose at home plate, standards at first, systems at second, and vision at third. You just sort of wrapped around the bases and created a subjective level of awareness to yourself individually, but it's tied into a cool evolution. It's always been fun to ask people these questions. So when you think about, right now, in beautiful conversation, and it always has been whenever I've talked to you, but when you look at yourself outside of baseball, just you as a human, and you think about your purpose to this moment, from all the experiences to today, sort of what is the sustainable why, right? How do you identify with yourself? What's sort of the service you give to just people around you? What fills you up through that service? And then my favorite question inside of what gives people drive is, what are you willing to struggle for? And so when you sort of think of right now in the moment of today, what are sort of those things, especially with, I guess, a world pandemic, we'll throw that in there too, and you're not able to do what you like doing every day. What's been the thing that's been sustaining your progress, your ability to keep getting up and wanting to move forward?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think this is, again, just to be as kind of as transparent as possible, this is an area that I struggle with sometimes. Like, what is my true purpose?
Yeah.
Like in what I do, and what is my true purpose in life? And I don't know if I've settled on an answer. I think, to be quite honest. And I think that, in a lot of ways it's to serve, it's to teach. And I know that seems cliche, but that's where I'm the most comfortable.
Yeah.
Right. I'm the most comfortable when I'm on the dirt with my guys and I get to just kind of go into our world. Right. And really just be engulfed in what we're doing. And, that really drives me. Like that moment of having a conversation on the player in the dirt, just, and it going boom, and it clicking, and you just going, yep. Mm-hmm. That's like the hit, right? That's the where the adrenaline kind of hits you and you're like, yep, that's why I do this, right? Is when that light bulb goes off. And it's such a cool feeling to see guys go, yeah. And then also watch them be able to take that light bulb and apply it to, their everyday work. Right. Sure. But I really struggle with that question. I really do. And I think about it a lot, and it comes up a lot. I think it's a popular topic on podcasts. It's a popular topic on Twitter, and what's your why? And I want to say that I have this super organic, answer and just but I just don't I don't know what it is. I think I'm just constantly searching for it. And I think if you're constantly searching, you're constantly driven by finding it. And,
Yeah.
and that's kind of how I work. Like I'm not a very scripted out individual, and I just want to keep searching for the why, and when it comes, and when I do know, like, I'll know, like, but like right now, I don't know if I have a perfect answer for that, but I'm just driven by, um, being with the guys, and doing what I do, and teaching, and trying to provide an opportunity for a player to get to the big leagues that I never had. Right. Like,
right.
yeah. Right. Like I wanted to get to like I get to live through them now. Right. Like, and that's cool. Like
Yeah.
when you get that phone call, or you get to make a phone call because your first guy is getting his big league debut,
Right.
or he made the 40 man.
So cool.
And like
Right.
that feeling right there alone is like, man, that's like winning the lottery. Right. Like it's just like, it's so cool, and such a cool feeling. Like, and it almost fills you like with a bunch of emotion, right? Like, like it's just, I wonder what that would have felt like from a player,
For sure.
being a player. And now you get to feel it. And I think it's just so much more gratifying from a coaching standpoint, right? Because it's because you help somebody else accomplish their dreams.
You help solve that problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I think it's a really fair question. And I think one of the reasons I struggle with it the most is like, I just don't want it to be the cliche, like, I'm just I'm just a servant to others. And like, you know what I mean? Like, I just want it to be, my why, not everybody else's why. And I think that's why I struggle to fill the words for that.
Yeah, no, I think that you just hammered it home and nailed it. And I'm actually really excited for a lot of people to listen to this. And obviously a lot of our backgrounds is baseball people. I'm focused with a lot of baseball guys in their off seasons, right? And I get a lot of the backlash. So do you. I get a lot of the back end where guys leave their career, and I think that as a baseball player or anyone in a field, I mean, the hardest part about moving on is that you feel identified to a certain thing, and you can't handle the depths of just thinking through that question. Where when I was a player, I wanted to have that answer, and as I've been very fortunate to have many of these conversations with people like yourself and extraordinary people from around the world at this point, which has been really cool for me. I've been able to sit on the other end of asking that question. And what it's evolved for me was, it gave me confidence of not having to have an answer, and that's where I love that you just said that, because it's an evolution, and that's why I try to tailor it towards till now, what are you feeling? Because it's something that, as long as you're pushing forward, I mean, peace comes in progress. So it's just progressively moving forward and growing. And that could change. I had a different purpose when I was a player to when I'm now, and who knows what we'll be in 10 years. So it's a question that I always wanted answered. And that's what made me intrigued to ask the question, so I could figure out for my own self that there probably isn't an answer for this. And that was cool for me, so, and you just hammered it on the head there. So I think that's amazing. And now tying that in, you go down to that spot and you look at your standards and you look at things that put you in a position to teach or serve or get you to the level where you can make the phone call and get someone to the big leagues. And, you fall to that layer of those standards and how you make choices as an individual. So if you think of yourself, not necessarily coaching a guy or an organization or a team, but what does Billy do in terms of what do you have to check off throughout the day, or your non-negotiables is how I sort of tailor them towards, or what are your non-negotiables mentally, physically, emotionally that puts you in a position to optimize your behavior?
Oh, man. Whew.
Yeah,
I don't know if I got an answer to that.
Put your floaties on, man. We're in the deep end.
Yeah. We are definitely in the deep end. And again, I think that's maybe an area. I mean, like I said, I'm a pretty fiery guy, and I think I get that a lot, to where you're intimidating, or you're emotional, or where you wear your emotions on your sleeves. And so again, I mean, looking back to my playing days, this is an area that I really struggled. Like, I mean, I wanted to slam bats. I wanted to throw helmets. I was very, very fiery, emotional type of player. And I still deal with that now, right? Like trying to control, outburst or whatever it is. But it's also one of the things that I think really drives me, right? It's like I'm really in tune with my passions and the things that mean something to me. And Sometimes it comes off as aggressive, and sometimes it comes off as, and that's one thing I've really had to learn over the last, couple of years of how to control that, and being able to just to kind of step back and open your ears a little bit more, and not be so closed off. And I don't know if I have a checklist per se, but you got me thinking about it, and I probably should, but I think it's just trying to have the ability to, okay, rewind, right? Slow down, listen, right? Like, and not just listen, but listen, right? Like really engulf yourself into what the individual's saying, try to understand where they're coming from, and make your decision and your response appropriate to what they're saying. I think you got to try to find time for yourself too, right? Like you got to be able to find some quiet time. If it's in the gym, if it's on a run, it's a bike, if it's engulfing yourself in a book or whatever it is, I think you got to try to find time to just disengage sometimes too, right? I think absolutely in a lot of ways we are overly engulfed in what's going on, especially at a time like now, with all the crazy stuff going on, and especially in the baseball world, like we're trying to figure out, are we even going to have a season? What's that season look like? Right. And, we got all these worries and just trying to figure out a way through that.
Yeah. Well, and that's a lot of creation comes through isolation, right? So people will step up and we'll figure things out as we always have, and this will pass and we'll come up with, it'll be cool. I was journaling, I'm a big journaler, but I was journaling this morning about, the new world, what's that going to look like? There's going to be a lot of cool things that come out of this that we'll all sort of adapt into. And so, it'll kind of ring it out towards third when you think about adaptation and visualizing the future. You're rather, you've got a lot of years, hopefully, in terms of the baseball world and what you want to do and what you want to accomplish. And your trek is amazing. To get that timeline, it's always cool to hear that from your perspective, because I'm still getting to know you, right? And to hear that, it's just a cool thing. And then see you're a couple of years older than me, to see where you're at and the level of human you communicate with on a daily basis, and then to hear you sort of reiterate that vulnerability, that always learning. I love that, because you're raising your platform every year to be a better learner, so you learn things better than you did last year and the year before and the year before. And that's cool to get from your perspective, especially as a guy who used to play professional baseball, to hear a coach say that. It's just, that's the coolest thing, right? So it's cool to put my mind as if I would have played for you, which is pretty fascinating for my own self. But the carrot out in front of you, Billy, what excites you to take everything that you've talked about? Where do you see yourself taking yourself? What's the thing out in front that you want to really get after?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm really driven, like I was as a player, to get to the big leagues.
That's awesome.
I'd love to coach in the big leagues, and hopefully have that opportunity someday. I mean, my dream job is to coach third base in the big leagues.
That's awesome.
And be, and help run a defense or whatever it is. But I think for me, like I've always been really fascinated by coaching third base, in at all levels. And I think that's the player in me, right? Like that's the decision making. It's the in the moment 50-50 wave or hold, safe or out 50-50, bang, bang at the plate, like making those decisions in real time that can impact the game is the closest we get to being on the surface as a player. And I'm just driven by that thought, right? Like it's the closest we can get to hitting a sac fly to win the game, or hitting a walk-off home run, or striking a guy out to end a series or something, like it's the closest we get. And then like, I'm still like, I have a pretty fiery attitude a lot of the times, and my persona kind of is that way. And I think that's just the closest we can get to being a player. And in our hearts of hearts, all of us are still players in a lot of ways. Like we'd do anything to be able to lace them back up and get back on the dirt and make a play or strike a guy out or hit a home run, so that's kind of, what I'm driving for. But I think in order to do that, you got to have people on your side, and I'm really focused on that right now. Right. Yeah. Like I'm really focused on providing environments that are good for our players, but really also trying to engage with people around me that either we agree or we don't agree.
Yeah.
Like, and the guys that I don't agree with are the guys that are even the most important. I think is being able to find new ways to better our players, or find new ways to think about things, or find new ways to collect data, or whatever it is. And I'm really kind of engulfed in that right now of just trying to continuously learn from those people, and hopefully someday when, if I'm blessed to get an opportunity to interview for a big league job, and I hope I do, that, I could put those people on paper as references, and those people would say, hey, like at first, me and Boyer, we didn't hit it off too hot, but here's what we were able to do, and here's what he did to come to common grounds or whatever, and you need people in your corner. Yeah. I think, this game isn't necessarily about how much information you have, or, like there's a lot of guys that have a lot of answers to a lot of problems, but they're not coaching in the big leagues or even coaching in general. Right. So it's like, I think all of us have a pretty good sense of the feel for the game. Right. Yeah. But it's about people. It's about how you can connect with people. It's about how, you make good decisions and you put yourself, in a position to succeed with the people around you. And, so, hopefully someday I'm in the big leagues and I get that opportunity. But right now my focus is where we're at and what we're doing, and trying to get players there to impact that big league club.
Beautiful answer, man. It was very enjoyable. I know you and I have been talking about this, and unfortunately, but fortunately, we had some time with the times that are happening right now where we could sort of connect, and it's been cool to pick your brain and to hear from you, man. But from myself and the rest of the Mindstrong team, there's a lot more guys than just myself. So for the entire foundation of it, dude, you're a coach, man, and it's cool to hear your coach. You got that teaching, that part of you, right? That servant in you, and to give away your time, man, that's the coolest form of leadership that we can get. So you gave that up for Mindstrong today. And I can't wait to sort of pass that torch on to people that we don't even know who will listen to this, but more so for myself, man. You've given me time since the moment I met you, and you've always listened to me, asked me questions, and I've been able to do that back. And I think that that's such a cool part about our game, is that people like that make you hungry to want to serve it, and they make you want to add value to the system. And that was the first thing that you did to me. And so for that, I'm grateful. And I'm also grateful for having this conversation with you. And I can't wait for people to listen to it. I think it'll help a lot of people. It helped me out, and keep doing what you're doing, man. I know we'll keep talking, but it was really fun to have your time today.
No, I really appreciate having me. It's been a cool experience for me to be able to be on a podcast, which I've had the luxury of being on quite a few of them, but most of them are technique based and kind of, really baseball based. It's been really kind of cool to have a conversation that is not necessarily about that. We haven't talked about baseball really, technique at all. I've really enjoyed learning from you and from a lot of other people in the space. And it's kind of cool to be able to have a pretty organic conversation about just, whatever. So I appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, right on, Billy. Well, hey, man, we will pump this out and get some circuits out for people to follow you. Is there just for people who are listening, what are some ways that they can follow you, and what circuits are you on as an individual?
Yeah, so Twitter is probably the best way. You can follow me at Billy Balltime 7. It's Billy Balltime 7. Mm-hmm. I'm on there quite a bit, actually, sharing content and we've been doing some webinars lately to kind of raise some funds for COVID, to kind of fight this thing head on. So there's some other coaches that we've involved in, and it'd be cool if people could kind of join us with that cause, but not to do a selfish plug there, but so no, it's that's probably the best place to find me. And if anybody wants to interact or ask questions or say hello, then they're more than welcome to do that.
That's awesome. We'll reach out to Billy, and Billy, I will talk to you soon, man. Cheers.
Thanks, Harvey. I appreciate you, brother.
All right, brother.